I think we'll get started. We are at 9:15. Good morning. Welcome to the 7th Annual Pulse Conference, New Beginnings. I'm Sonia Eckerman, manager of the Harris Literacy Program. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your day with us. This program is a core part of what we do at Harris, and we were privileged and thankful to partner with ReadingWorks for the first 6 conferences. We continue the work in year 7 and are so excited about the lineup of presenters we have here for you today. This year, I feel so fortunate to have had so many yeses to our invitation to presenters. One thing that struck me as we were developing this year's program, really at all stages, is the level of support and family we have in this virtual space. Everyone coming together, doing what they can to make this conference happen again this year. I am so proud to be part of this community, a community that supports one another in the like-minded pursuit to find ways to improve the lives of our learners. That's really why we're all here. It's a love, appreciation, and dedication to our community of learners. They know we will never give up on them, and we will never give up on each other. Our hope is that we have achieved what we set out to accomplish back in March of 2021 when planning began. We were feeling tired and weary because of the relentless nature of the pandemic. Nonetheless, we were optimistic that a new day was coming, a new beginning, looking at communities within communities, our immigrant neighbors, our undocumented friends, our returning citizens, and our asylum seekers. We wanted this to be a day that left us feeling refueled for the work ahead, for the new beginning. Thank you to the Pulse 2021 Steering Committee for all of your hard work. Our hope is that we are bringing you an impactful day of relevant material and takeaways for you to use in your work every day. These truly are unprecedented times, and we've all been challenged over the past 20 months with how to better serve our community of adult learners. Looking around at the faces, I'm reminded that we have found success in small and not so small ways. Let's continue moving forward and lifting one another. We're all just a text, email, Zoom, or phone call away. Again, welcome. Now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Ahmad Ezzedine, Associate Vice President for Educational Outreach and International Programs, Senior Associate to the President for Special Initiatives, and Interim Associate Provost for Enrollment Management. Dr. Ezzedine?
Good morning. Thank you, Sonia, for the introduction and for all the great work that you have done on keeping Pulse alive and thriving and keeping engaged with the community. So we appreciate all your efforts and the team that helped put the day's agenda together. Good morning, all. Welcome to Wayne State University, albeit virtually. The work we do in literacy changes lives, and it's easy to lose sight of that when we are dealing with budget cuts and masks and vaccines and deadline and the minutiae of life. We are so glad to have you with us today. And as we start, I'd like to recognize and talk about someone who truly believed in the power of literacy. I'm sure you all have heard of this man, as his name is on our literacy program, and some of you may have even met him. His name was Mort Harris, and it is because of his generosity that we are together at this workshop. Mort was a generous man, and he made a sizable donations all over Metro Detroit, one of which was his donation to Wayne State to establish the Harris Literacy Program. He passed away this summer at the age of 101. And if you will allow me, I would like to tell you about this remarkable man. I don't know if you ever spent a day with a billionaire with a B. And I'm not talking about the billionaires whose accomplishments are spending 11 minutes in space. But to give you a sense of the type of person he was, when I first, right earlier when I first met him, he probably showed me his car, his used car. Yes, he boasted to me that he always bought pre-owned vehicles. Mort was a humble, kind, and unassuming man. I have fond memories of the stories he told me about his life. The stories flowed from him easily and imparted life lessons. He was born not too far from our campus and even took classes here before it was even Wayne State University. By the age of 23, he was an American hero. In World War II, he was part of the 8th Air Force bomber crew. During his time fighting Nazi oppression in World War II, Mort earned the nickname the Berlin Kid in recognition of his 33 successful missions flying B-17 Flying Fortress behind enemy lines. Mort once said, and I quote, "There were many times my crew and I were frightened to death, but knew that we had to complete our mission and return to base if at all possible. The most difficult times were when one of our fellow B-17s were shot down and we watched the plane become engulfed in flames as 10 valiant airmen plunged to their death. It is still something that haunts me to this day and has caused me to question my faith." Mort went on to found companies, raise a family, earn awards, and live life for 101 years. At his memorial this summer, his family distributed booklets entitled 101 Years of Wisdom, Mort's Advice on Living the Life of a Lucky Bastard. And in it are Mort's favorite truisms like number 82, don't expect money to bring you happiness, and learn to show cheerfulness even when you don't feel like it. Number 6, choose a charity in your community and support it generously with your time and money. And given our focus here today, listen to this one. Number 4, read a good book. I could go on and on, but it's clear that Mort was a man who valued giving back to his community, to those whom he knew and to those he never met. I'll never forget the times I drove around with him in Detroit to show him the various sites of the Harris Literacy Program. It felt good to know we could play a small role in helping him achieve one of his wishes. Like he says in the book number 94, make it a habit to do nice things for people who'll never find out. I can't think of any better words to leave you all this morning than with the book's how the book ends, number 163. Commit yourself to a mighty purpose. Our work in literacy is changing lives, and it's noble work and serves a mighty purpose. It's great to be with you all today, and I know Mort would be proud to see you all doing this work, and we're so happy that you are continuing with us on this journey. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce also another one of my heroes and our keynote speaker for today. Dr. Marquita Chamblee is the inaugural Associate Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer for Wayne State University. When she started serving in this role in 2015, she was tasked with developing the infrastructure for supporting the university's strategic goals related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and with leading a broad range of initiatives and institutional councils and working groups with the goal of improving the culture and addressing the various issues related to diversity, inclusion, and equity. She created and launched the Office of Multicultural Student Engagement, OMSE, the first of its kind office at Wayne State University, designed to provide space for connection and academic support for students from historically marginalized identities. She led the design and implementation of the first comprehensive diversity campus climate study to assess the campus climate for students, faculty, and staff, and identify and recommend areas of improvement. Most recently, Dr. Chamblee is currently leading the Social Justice Action Committee, a presidential initiative to drive culture change and foster a climate of inclusion and equity throughout the university. A great thought leader, Marquita's contribution to the campus community have helped Wayne State confront objectively our shortcomings as an institution and work on constructive solutions to address them as we continue to strive to become a better, more inclusive and welcoming institution. Her creativity, vision, unassuming leadership, and thoughtful approach are a model to be emulated, and were recognized earlier this year by Crain's Detroit Business when she was recognized as a notable executive in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I can think of no one better to help lead us this morning and lead this conference and our discussions on New Beginning than Dr. Chamblee. Please help me welcome her to the podium, the virtual podium.
Thank you so much, Ahmad, and so pleased to be here. And That was a wonderful introduction. I hope that I can share some thoughts that will live up to that. I want to begin by acknowledging that Wayne State University rests on Wawayatanong, also referred to as Detroit, the ancestral and contemporary homeland of the Three Fires Confederacy. These sovereign lands were granted by the Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, and Wyandot nations in 1807 through the Treaty of Detroit. Wayne State University affirms Indigenous sovereignty and honors all tribes with a connection to Detroit. With our Native neighbors, Wayne State can advance educational equity and promote a better future for the earth and all its peoples. So I wanted to begin with that, just as a means of acknowledging where we sit. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about new beginnings. And I want to also thank Ahmad Ezzeddine and Sonia Eckerman for inviting me to share a few thoughts and ideas with you as you embark upon the conference this year. New beginnings is a totally appropriate theme for this year, given all that we've been through and all that we continue to go through. Last year, you talked about resilience, and in many ways, we are still in that mode of persevering against challenging circumstances and learning to roll with pretty much whatever is thrown at us. Last year, educators quickly shifted to remote instruction and students to remote learning, and so many things were challenging for everyone. For many people, working from home became the norm. But what about people who could not work remotely? Various issues and inequities arose, and we were challenged to think about those who have privilege and those who don't. Now we're challenged by returning to teaching and learning and engaging others in person, or sometimes in a hybrid format. There's no new normal, there's no pathway, clear pathway as we continue to confront the realities of the pandemic and its aftermath and side effects. So how do we think about new beginnings? I want to talk with you this morning about 4 things: fear and overcoming fear, hope and how we find it and hold on to it, the intrinsic rewards of doing good work, and how diversity, equity, and inclusion fits into all of this. Because of my role at the university, I have to talk a little bit about DE&I. So I want to begin by talking about fear and overcoming fear. I want to begin by telling a story from my life. 10 years ago, I had a series of what I now call unfortunate events. It began when my father died near the end of 2010 and extended into 2011 with the ending of my relationship with my significant other, the loss of my job 2 months later, and having to relocate from my home of 6 years. I can remember sitting in the living room of my rented condo, surrounded by boxes of my stuff, wondering what on earth happened to me. I didn't see it then, but that was the start of my new beginnings. But before I could recognize this as a new beginning, I had to reckon with grief over what had been lost and fear of the unknown. So let's take a moment to talk about fear. I've seen the acronym for the word fear, F-E-A-R, spelling out a couple of things that I would point out this morning. One is false evidence appearing real, which to me means that so often the things that frighten us are based on false evidence. Things that are scary can seem so real when sometimes they are simply an illusion. Now, when I'm talking about fear here, I'm not speaking about something truly frightening when it makes sense to be afraid. The kind of fear I'm referring to is the kind that keeps us from realizing our full potential, the things that hold us back from our new beginnings. Sometimes the roadblocks that we face might seem insurmountable, but are there ways to think differently about the problem, to tackle it from a different angle? Are there ways to be sure that we are looking at it from a place of possibility rather than one of impossibility? How does fear keep us from our new beginnings? How many times have you talked yourself out of something because you were afraid, because it moved you outside of your comfort zone? I have never been a risk taker, and so there are times I have missed out on opportunities because I was afraid. FOMO, or fear of missing out, affects so many people when fear of the unknown or the uncomfortable keeps us from taking chances. Fear immobilizes us and keeps us indecisive. It keeps us standing on the precipice of possibilities, afraid to take the leap. I read a quote that said, if you wait until everything in your life is perfect before beginning something challenging and new, you'll be waiting forever. The best time is now. And I like this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I have lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. As I mentioned from my personal story, sometimes new beginnings emerge out of setbacks. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. Many new beginnings come wrapped in something scary, a lost job, a divorce, an illness. Roosevelt's approach is that we gain courage when we stop and face the scary thing. We get to a place where we know we can take the next thing that comes along. It's important when fear or unexpected and painful endings occur that we have a vision to anchor ourselves to. The poet and author Audre Lorde said, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. There have been many times when I've felt a sense of fear about taking on a new challenge or facing opposition. That's when I remember my vision, why I do what I do day in and day out, month after month, year after year. I hold in my mind and heart the vision for why I do what I do. And while my fear does not evaporate, it certainly diminishes. Rosa Parks said, I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. Sometimes it's mind over matter. We make a decision about a course of action, focus on our vision, take a deep breath, and go ahead and do what must be done. Two other acronyms for the word fear. Forget everything and run is one option, which under some circumstances is very tempting. Another is face everything and rise. This is where perseverance and resilience come into play. Which one do you prefer? Think about times when you've overcome fear and write a word or two about that in the chat. I want to shift now from fear to hope and to think about how we find and hold on to hope. In the midst of the global pandemic, as well as the social and racial unrest that was rekindled by the murder of George Floyd, and all the other dramas and traumas playing out in our country and around the world, how do we find hope? I think the first step is to look for it. It might seem obvious, but when you're in the midst of a struggle, it's easy to forget about what's positive. When I went through my year of losses, I did not spend a whole lot of time focused on what I had lost, even though what I had lost was substantial. I made a conscious decision to focus on what I still had, and I had a lot. I took 3 important steps. First, I focused every day on what I was grateful for. No matter what I had lost, the more I looked, the more I found to be grateful for. I started writing a daily gratitude blog that I wrote every day for 3 years. I called it Lessons in Gratitude. It helped me focus on hopeful things. And by sharing it publicly, because I posted it online every day, it helped me remain accountable to being grateful. A small group of readers who had gotten used to reading my daily gratitude blog, shared it with others, which magnified the impact of the hope I was writing about. And other people were able to share their own experiences of how gratitude for what is important to them transformed their lives. Creating a daily intentional space for recalling and expressing gratitude for the many blessings I had in my life was in itself a blessing. In the midst of trauma and feelings of sadness, grief, and suffering, my gratitude blog allowed me to seek and without fail find the good things present in my life. Yes, I was struggling through some difficulties, but I rarely lost sight of the very many good things I experienced on a daily basis. I called the blog Lessons in Gratitude because not only was I grateful for the tangible things I could see, hear, feel, and experience, but also for the intangibles, for the lessons I learned about forgiveness, perseverance, grief, letting go, and so many other deeply valuable life-affirming lessons. The second step I took during this time of uncertainty and unemployment and such loss was to begin volunteering at a local food pantry. I helped pack up and distribute groceries to families in need. I felt that in spite of my own situation, I could still find time to do something for someone else. It was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I experienced deep connection with people, both the clients and my fellow volunteers, all in service to helping those around us. I did not look on our clients as poor people, because some who had come in had experienced setbacks even as I had, losing a job or some other misfortune. There were a few times when I needed to take groceries home for myself, as I was unemployed and struggling financially. The third thing I did was to begin attending meditation and mindfulness sessions at a local meditation center. I had so much noise and turmoil in my mind and heart during the early days of loss that I needed to create a space for quiet. I needed to calm my disquieted mind and spirit. I found a home and a community there that helped me find my new beginnings. Hope, like gratitude, is something you can find if you look for it. It sometimes takes an act of will to have hope in the midst of extremely challenging circumstances. Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, "Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness." And I think when we are challenged by so many things in the world, it remains important to look for what is hopeful. When you look at your life, where do you find hope? What gives you hope? Please take a moment and think about that and put that in the chat. What are the things that give you hope, and what are the things that you find hopeful in your life as you look around you? So I want to shift and talk about the intrinsic rewards of doing good work. Facing everything and rising, confronting our fears, and finding hope in the midst of difficulties are important precursors to doing our life work. Having a vision we can anchor to, as mentioned earlier in the Audre Lorde quote, is key. Understanding why we do what we do is important as well. Each and every one of you attending this conference is engaged in doing good work. You work with people who are in need of your gifts and skills, whether it's helping to improve literacy, teaching, working to support returning citizens or those who are still incarcerated, supporting undocumented immigrants and refugees, helping to provide food and shelter to those facing food and housing insecurity. And in so many other ways, you are doing good work. Those of us who do people work do not do it because we believe we'll get rich doing so. And some of you can probably say amen to that. I've been doing DEI work with and on behalf of people for 38 years, and I can tell you the rewards of doing it are not monetary, but internal. The motivation to work with and on behalf of people often comes from what's inside of us. That sense of knowing that this work is a calling of sorts and that we do it for intrinsic rather than extrinsic rewards. Psychologist and author Marshall Rosenberg said, "I believe that the most joyful and intrinsic motivation human beings have for taking any action is the desire to meet our needs and the needs of others." When I think about the work that I do in diversity, equity, and inclusion, I find that I am motivated by a variety of things, and I'd like to share a few of those with you. First is the passion for equity, inclusion, and the desire for justice, to be sure that people are treated fairly with equitable access to the things that they need to achieve their personal and professional aspirations and goals, and to create an environment where everyone feels a part of the institutions and spaces they inhabit. There's the earnest wish to help people. I do the work I do because I want to help people, and those of us who are assembled for this conference are doing the same, working to help people. And that comes from an earnest desire that I think is inherent in those of us who do people work to really make sure that we are assessing and addressing the needs of the people around us. The commitment to fairness. We engage in people work with hope and assumptions that they will be treated fairly regardless of their identities, backgrounds, or positions in the social hierarchy. And then finally, the vision for creating spaces and workplaces and educational spaces where people can bring their whole and best selves without leaving parts of themselves at the door when they arrive, only to pick them back up when they leave. We want people to be able to bring their fullness and their wholeness in the work that we do and in the spaces that we create for people. We do this work because we want the best for the people we serve. At the end of the day, we take actions to meet the needs of others who are entrusted to us in some form or fashion. Often too, the work that we do reverberates and ripples outward in ways we could not have predicted, and we end up touching people indirectly by the work we do directly for people. I have a whiteboard in my office, and across the top is written, "What have I done today to advance the cause of social change, justice, love, and peace for everyone?" I leave it on my board as a reminder to ask myself that question. What have I done today to accomplish these things? What's really important in doing this work is connecting to your why, understanding what motivates you to do the work you're doing. Take a moment to reflect on your why and put that in the chat, just to kind of get a sense of why we do what we do. So how does DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, fit into this? The work of DEI is embedded in this notion of new beginnings. The work that we all do is in service to helping people learn, grow, and thrive, regardless of their many identities and backgrounds. We as a society have a long way to go to ensure social justice and equity. But as we think about new beginnings, we must envision a world where everyone has the opportunity to achieve their personal and professional desires and aspirations. Diversity is such a broad term that has in some ways lost its meaning. In the context of DEI, it is about the many backgrounds, identities, life experiences, and many other facets that make us unique. The people we serve come from all different kinds of backgrounds and experiences. It's vitally important that we understand the impact of our own identities on how we view the world and how we interact with other people. So let's do a quick exercise. And I'm sure you didn't think I was going to make you work this morning, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a little exercise. I want you to get out something to write on, and I want you to draw And the word draw sometimes strikes terror in people's hearts if you're like me and are somewhat artistically challenged. But I want you to draw a pair of glasses. And it's as simple as drawing two circles and then connecting them with a line where the bridge of the nose might be. So as best I can tell, that's the simplest way I can think of to draw a pair of glasses. And in these glasses, I want you to begin by writing words in the lenses, inside of the lenses or your circles that describe, all of your demographic characteristics, your age, your race, ethnic background, your biological sex, religious affiliation, your sexual orientation. So all of the things, all of your demographic characteristics. I also want you to include other characteristics such as your socioeconomic class. Are you middle class, working class, upper class? Your marital status. What part of the country are you from? Your birth order. I was a middle child. Your body type, personality, any other characteristics you can think of just to fill in those circles that are your glasses there. And then I want you to write in any experiences you feel have contributed to making you the person you are. So maybe you were a first-generation student or a veteran or a cancer survivor. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you were an only child. So I want you to let your imagination go and fill in both of those lenses with all those things that make you who you are. So just take a couple of minutes and do a little bit of writing. What kinds of hobbies do you have? Things like that make you who you are. So hopefully you've scribbled in your glasses and thought about who you are, and now that you've written in your various identities and background and experiences, think about what it would be like to look through those glasses. Okay, you would hardly be able to see anything without looking through the lenses of your experiences, identities, and backgrounds. And that's how we walk through the world. So everything we see and interact with, everyone we see and interact with, we see through these lenses, and they're looking back at us through the lenses of their backgrounds and experiences. So why is this important? Because those of us who do people work need to understand the impact of our identities on how we relate to the people we're working with and for. I need to know that my identities as African American, female, middle class, and the other ways, the other identities and backgrounds that I have affect the way I see and interact with the people around me. So this really sets the stage for another important component of the DEI equation, which is inclusion. Inclusion is, in part, creating a sense of belonging, feeling respected and supported and valued for who you are, and proactively ensuring the same thing for others. Inclusion, in part, means how we view the diversity around us and acknowledge and embrace and incorporate it into the work that we do. So when you think about, looking through the lenses and seeing, people through the lenses of your identities, it's really not about erasing anything off of those. We are who we are, but it's about recognizing that who we are has an impact on how we engage with the people around us. And it's just a matter of being aware. It's not simply enough to have diverse groups of people in a setting. It's about building an environment in which people feel like they are welcomed and feel a sense of connection and belonging. How do you create spaces for inclusion for different people? The poet and author and icon Maya Angelou said, "I have learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." For those of us who do people work, how we engage them and connect them and create a sense of belonging for them is all about building inclusive community. People come to us for a variety of reasons: advice, support, information, etc. They initially come for what we can offer them, what we have for them, what we can give them. They come back to us, though, because of how we make them feel. If we create a space where people feel connected and engaged and supported, they come back. And in some cases, they bring others. Early in my career, I discovered that if I created a connection with the students I was working with, they would not only come back to see me, but often referred their friends to me for my assistance and support. And even if they weren't in the same unit that I was in, they just needed support. And it didn't matter whether I had some of the specific advice that they needed. What they were looking for was just this support and assistance and knowing that someone cared. So this is about inclusion and engaging people where they are and lifting them up with our support and caring. So let me say a quick word about equity, a third part of the DEI equation. Put simply, equity means providing resources and support to each person according to their individual needs, while equality means treating everyone the same, irrespective of their needs. So many of our students, staff, and faculty in higher education experience disparate outcomes based on factors such as race, gender identity, socioeconomic background, and other factors. Equity takes into account the individual needs of various groups and seeks to meet those needs in fair and purposeful ways. The American Association of Colleges and Universities puts it this way: equity is about fairness. It ensures that each person gets what he or she needs. This distinction is especially important in education, where visible gaps in opportunities and outcomes for a large number of students exist. Simply put, we must meet the needs of people around us by assessing what they are lacking and providing it, not providing everyone with the same remedy. So equity is an important part of the full DE&I picture. So I want to conclude with a few final thoughts about new beginnings. New beginnings mean embracing new opportunities. Sometimes, often in fact, that means letting go of things that we are comfortable with, but that no longer serve us. Letting go can be difficult, even painful. But sometimes, as Lao Tzu said, new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. So in the midst of these endings, my hope is that we recognize the opportunities that might be just under the surface. In this time of continued uncertainty, how can we seek out rather than run from new beginnings? Perhaps it requires taking a leap into the unknown. A leap of faith is just that, taking a step without being certain that everything will work out. New beginnings is almost always signals a time of change, and at times we can be resistant to change. So how do we shift from a place of resistance to a place of acceptance of the situation? It takes courage to seek out new beginnings, not waiting for something to happen, but nudging it into being. Either way, we know something is changing, and it is our task to embrace the change. What's important to know is that we are equal to the task, that we have the courage, resilience, perseverance, and stamina to approach our new beginnings. We can, as Eleanor Roosevelt said, take the next thing that comes along. We've done it before, and we can do it again. I want to just say one quick thing about my own new beginnings, and that is that After all that I lost in my year of unfortunate events, I want to say that I regained in some measure everything that I had lost and then some. And so sometimes the endings need to happen to make way for new beginnings. So I want to close with words from Maya Angelou. Do the best you can. And when you know better, do better. May we all do our best, embrace our new beginnings, and move on. Thank you again for your time, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Marquita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chamblee. Thank you for setting the tone of this conference and reminding us and affirming that we're more alike than different, and sharing your incredible story with us and trusting us with it. We are grateful for your yes and for being here with us today. And please know that the adult education community family has an open door for you anytime. Thank you.